So briefly, what are these creatures that we deal with in this work? Demons are fallen angels, right? Most of us know that. They're not bad people that become something different after they die. Here's the thumbnail sketch of what happened. Before physical creation, the angels were created with free will, just like you have. But the beatific vision, the actual seeing God, hadn't happened yet. They were told what the plan is, what they were created for, and we know from Thomas that each one has a particular function, a ministry, and faculties to do that ministry. They were shown to the end of time what their job was, and God basically said, "Will you do your job? I give you free will, choose." Satan and a third of the angels, we infer from Revelations with the stars and the dragon sweeping them from the sky, a third of them fell, said no, and they were cast down to where? Where's the devil? Hell? Earth? He's on the earth. So read Revelations, read St. Paul, who describes him as a lion roaming about the earth seeking who he can devour. Read Revelations. Michael cast him out of heaven in the war, which was a war of propositions and philosophy, of course. Angels don't have fists and guns. Cast down to here, to roam here till the final judgment, to tempt us. That's his job. Okay? It's important that you understand he's irredeemable, and he doesn't want to be redeemed. He's never going to say, "I'm sorry, I've thought about it. I was young, I needed the money, God, please take me back." Okay? He's never going to say that. They will play that game sometimes to get sympathy, but it's not real. He's a creature on a leash, and Jesus has the leash. It's important that you understand that. He only lets the leash slip and give him a little bit of room to move when we choose to enter into a relationship with him. So need we fear him? Yes and no. Temptation is a serious thing. We need to cleave to God in the face of strong temptation. Don't have bravado. I can handle this. I can do it on my own. Cleave to God. Pray. When you are tempted, pray. The fathers in the desert tell us this over and over in the stories from the earliest church. When you are tempted, when you are assaulted, turn to prayer. Even if it's brief, Jesus, help me. Mary, pray for me. We don't need to fear him in the sense that Jesus is in control. So even if he's doing something extraordinary, it's going to be limited. But we also don't want to completely dismiss him and say, "Oh, I don't have to worry about that. I'm saved. I've surrendered myself to God. I'll never encounter any of that." Because even in the lives of the saints, we see many examples where the saints were tempted, assaulted. You've all heard about Padre Pio being physically beat, having issues like that. The Cure of Ars, with the famous comment when his bed burst into flame and the devil's standing there and he says, "Oh, it's you," and rolls over and goes to sleep, right? That's really the right attitude. Okay? I've had many times that he's told us he's going to kill us, or, the demons will threaten us, trash talk, all of this. None of that matters. If God is going to let you kill me, because it's God's will. But don't talk about it, because we're here to take care of business. We're here to do whatever we're there to do. So really, it's up to Jesus. He's where you need to be focused when you're thinking about this topic. And if you're entangled in a problem, the devil wants you staring at the devil, fearing him, thinking about him. What will he do next? Isn't this terrible? The opposite needs to happen. You need to be talking to God. When you wake up in the middle of night and something strange is happening, which is probably a waking dream, anything that only happens around sleep, it's probably a waking dream. Talk to Jesus. Don't get shaky and say, "Oh, there's something scary in the room. Lord, I'm confused. I'm scared right now. I'm not sure what this is. Please give me the grace to bear through this. Please, if it's your will, take this away." Talk to God. Focus there. In the history of the church, there's usually the most activity with exorcism and extraordinary activity of the demonic in missionary settings. Usually in the 50 or 100 years over history, when the church has entered a culture for the first time, there's a flurry of exorcisms. Then it goes quiet. Doesn't completely go away, but it goes quiet. Why are we seeing such a resurgence now? Many bishop friends have said the reason that they're setting up programs, the reason the USCCB had a special session in 2011 at their national conference on exorcism is because they're seeing so many real cases. After decades of 1 or 2 a year that turned out to be mental illness, now we're seeing sometimes 0, but usually 1 to 4 cases in every major city going at any one time. That's a dramatic increase from 10 years with 1 or 2 that turned out to be mental health. Why is that? My personal sense, this is just my opinion, is that we're a missionary country in reverse. The wave of Christianity rolled in, all of that flurry of activity happened, but in a sense, the wave is rolling back out for the most part in our culture, which has happened in Europe too, but to a greater extent. It's more progressed there. And as the wave rolls back and we cease to actively engage in our faith and pray as a community, and also as our culture explicitly rejects God and pushes God out of our culture, I think that gives the demonic more room to operate. And that's why I say I think we're a missionary country in reverse. So part of what Jesus seems to be doing in our age is raising up a new generation of very spiritual, very faithful priests and many exorcists. We used to have, when I started, maybe 10, 15 at the most in the whole country. He's raised up hundreds in the last 10 years. Okay? So pray. Pray for your priests. Pray for the exorcists. Pray for the people they're trying to help. Because we all really need it. And believe me, I'm held up by it. I don't pray enough. I have many mothers of orders, religious that I've known, priests that I know that put me on the altar every day. It gives me chills and it's humbling and I don't deserve it. But you guys hold us up. We hold each other up. Okay, we need that. Some of the things to look out for right now. There's a normalization of magic and the occult going on. It's not just as simple as saying, oh, Harry Potter's bad, don't read it. It's a book. But if you read it and you let it inform your approach, it can be dangerous, just like all the other books. Go to the the youth book section in a Walmart or the airport or a bookstore. The vast majority of the covers will be demonic, explicitly demonic. The vast majority of the stories now are about normalizing relationships with demons or half demons, that they're sympathetic characters that are misunderstood. This has already happened with vampires. You should know, if you go back and read Bram Stoker's Dracula, where's the source? Why is he a vampire? If you actually read the book, what does it say? It says he's possessed because his ancestor cut a deal with Satan for occult power in that family line of Satan worshipers, and every 11th generation would be completely possessed by Satan. That's what Bram Stoker's Dracula says. Van Helsing in the story uses a consecrated host to keep the vampire at bay. But in our culture, we've normalized all that and we made them an attractive, sensual creature that we should be interested in and glamorize. We're doing the same thing with demons now as a culture. We need catechesis. I work on many cases all over the country. One of the foundation issues is people don't know the rules. They don't know their faith. And the spiritual world is very legalistic. Demons are like lawyers, and I'm not picking on lawyers necessarily. But they really are. When we're in an exorcism, the first step is to find out by what right are you here, the demon. By what right are you able to do this? Then we bring the person back and we undo the right, the legal right. Until you find out what the right is and undo it, you could pray for 20 years. He'll say, they want me, I'm allowed to be here. Okay? First step, you have to undo his rights. And if you haven't undone them, he will literally say, you have no right to kick me out yet. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but you have no right. And then we may have to compel them to tell us. It's very legalistic. So you need to know the rules. Particularly, you need to catechize the young. In most communities, we've kind of lost that chain within the family of the grandparents encouraging the grandchildren and the parents to fully engage in their faith, to know some of the basics, why you don't play with the Ouija board or do spirit communication like in the ghost hunting shows. Why is that? What's the first commandment? You'll love God. You won't put any other spirit before him. Love him completely. Don't put other gods before him. What are you doing when you go into a room and you try to talk to a spirit and you want information from it? You're curious. You want to know information about the afterlife. Is it there? Is it real? Who are you? I want to hear your story. Or I want to get famous for doing that. You're telling God, I don't trust you. I'm going to get my information and comfort from this other spirit rattling around in this room here. There's probably a reason he put it first. It's probably a pretty important commandment. In a sense, all the other commandments flow out of the first one. So there's a number of things we've normalized in our culture. We are in a revival of the spiritualist movement, but now it's done on the ghost hunting shows with electronics instead of with mediums and Ouija boards. It's incredibly popular. There's literally thousands of groups of young people going in grandma's attic and trying to talk to some spirit. Briefly, souls in purgatory, which means you died and you weren't perfect, you didn't go straight to heaven, so you have some issues to work out, you have some baggage. They are allowed to petition the living for prayer. We see this in the lives of the saints many times. But only that. Necromancy, calling up the dead to talk to them, strictly forbidden. The word abhorrent is rarely used in the Bible. Abhorrent is how God is described as feeling if you call up the dead and talk to them. And he says, I will cut you off from my people and turn my face away from you if you do this. Strongest possible language. The poor souls, the souls in purgatory, you should pray for them. But don't ask them to manifest in your living room and talk to you. Because what shows up, if it does, probably won't, but if it did, it's not them. That's a demon pretending to be a ghost. A ghost will only be silent, a poor soul will only be silent, or if you say, do you need prayer? They may nod, they may signal yes, and that's it. Safety tip for anybody that's out there messing around with ghost hunting, or if you have things that you're seeing in your house, if it's a demon pretending to be a poor soul or a ghost, there'll be something deformed or missing. They won't be a complete figure. Second tip, if they want to have a conversation, it's not a person. That's a demon pretending to be a person. Finally, I think the attack on the family in our culture is kind of at the root of a lot of issues. It breaks the chain of cultural religion, culture within the family, shatters us, makes us just individuals holding down a job in different cities, no sense of lineage, no sense of connection. And it breaks the chain of catechesis, of these basics that aren't passed on to us. I have Catholics come up to me all the time after I'll speak in the public, and they'll say, I never knew. I'm a ghost hunter. I had no idea that this was a problem. Nobody told me. One other critical point. What's the difference between magical thinking and religious thinking? Magical thinking says, if I learn some esoteric secret, I can do something and wiggle my fingers and say some words, and my will be done. I'll get money, I'll get the girl, I'll take revenge on my enemy. This is quote-unquote magic. My will being foisted on other people in the world. My will be done. Do demons care how you wiggle your fingers or what words you say? No. Couldn't care less. You can't control them with magic. They will pretend to obey, to draw you in deeper until you're in so deep you can't get out. Then they'll turn on you. We see this all the time. We have Satanists and real witches, not bookstore witches, real witches, that are born and raised in it, coming out of those systems because at the end of their life, when they're getting ready to die, and the devil's done with them, he turns on them. He says, okay, you've been a decent car, but I'm done driving you, so now I'm going to start torturing you because I don't have any use for you anymore. And then they come to the church. By the way, one of the most beautiful moments I've had in all these years was praying with a woman who had been mixed up in Satanism when she was young. She had cancer. She was a few days away from dying. She couldn't even talk anymore. But she had talked to her sister and asked for somebody to come pray with her that she wanted to repent. In sitting with this dying woman and praying for her, I had the most beautiful sense of the Father's love at a child repenting and coming home I've ever experienced in my life. It's never too late for those of you that might be mixed up in this. Religious thinking is what? God's will be done. I may pray and ask, hey God, I'd like a Corvette. But I don't say, you better give it to me right now and expect it to appear. His will be done. Now that'd be a silly prayer, of course. But the point is, I may ask, Lord, we're stuck here in this case. We're not sure what to do. Help us, please. Would you make your creature? Not that it's his friend, but it's his creature. Everything is his creature. Reveal to us what we need to do to get this resolved. What's the legal right here, Lord? We may ask, not guaranteed. That's the difference. Magical thinking says, if I do the right thing, I'll have power and I'll get a guaranteed result. Religious thinking is, I serve God, what Father was talking about. I abandon myself to God, and whatever happens, happens. If I'm confident that I'm actually following God. And that comes back to the bishops, I think, especially in this work. You shouldn't just do this because you feel that you should do it. The church should have a reciprocal discernment of that and confirmation of that, particularly through the bishops. So briefly, what does the church see? We see demonic infestation. What's that mean? That's a demonic haunting. That means the demons have gotten the right to do extraordinary things in a place. So like you might bless your home. You might do an enthronement of the Sacred Heart, Immaculate Heart of Mary in your home. You've invited God in and you said, I have authority here and I give this place to God. There's people that serve evil spirits that do the same thing. This is why some people move into a home. They didn't do anything wrong, but a couple weeks, a couple months after living there, little things start, it escalates, and pretty soon really bad things are happening. Because somebody previously with authority gave those rights and you didn't undo them in the process of moving in. So it can be good to wipe the slate clean, have the house thoroughly blessed before you move into it. Don't be fearful, but there's a reason that tradition has been in the church of blessing a home once a year, and particularly when you move in. Those are demonic infestations. That means it's rattling around in the place. It's not possessing people, it's just annoying them, tormenting them, keeping them from sleeping. Demonic oppression, or obsession, depending on how obsessio is translated from the Latin, basically means it's focused on a person. Somebody has consented to some level of personal relationship, and so they're going to torment that person and affect them more dramatically and really bother them. They're going to try to separate them from their loved ones, and they want them sleep deprived. Those are the two most common things. And I know that sounds trivial, but sleep deprivation is a powerful way to break a person down. This is why you hear about that within like the whole debate about torture and all the things over time. It's a powerful tool. They want to break that person down and isolate them so they're alone only with the demon, and then either suicide or give in to possession. Those are the two goals. Then there's possession, what you've all seen in the movies and what everybody's interested in usually because they've seen it in the movies. In order to have that right, the demon isn't pretending to be your guardian angel or your spirit guide or your totem animal anymore, whatever game it was playing up to that point. They have to say, we're demons. We want to possess you in exchange for this. Or we want to possess you and we'll stop torturing you. See, the devil doesn't use a stick and a carrot. The devil hits you with the stick and says, I'll stop hitting you if you do what I want. Or he says, if you don't do what I want, I'll start hitting you with the stick. If he ever offers a carrot or reward, it's fake. It's not going to work out. And then once the person's possessed, they've given over so many rights that it takes the church coming in and standing in for them in a sense and intervening in that to get the person out of that situation. You've gone so far, it's hard to get out of it on your own at that point. And that's why you need professional help once you've determined that it's real. The church is very careful and has been for centuries about medical and psychological evaluations to make sure that these situations are not mundane medical problems. She is very cautious for good reason. There are many issues that can look like possession, and the person can misunderstand his possession, particularly later in life when some early dementia settles in and other things are happening with the aging process. Okay? So we're very cautious with that. The church not only wants all that ruled out by licensed medical professionals that we can't see and accounting for what's going on here, but she requires some of the 4 signs of possession, which are what? Supernatural strength. And that's the trickiest one, because in psychiatric settings, I can tell you, people can have amazing strength that are psychotic, but it doesn't last for hours. It's a burst of strength, usually. Knowledge of all languages. This one you can't really fake. You can't say schizophrenia made you fluent in 5 languages instantly. The example I always give from one of the early cases I worked on, a woman raised on a farm in rural Pennsylvania with a high school education. There was about 4 or 5 priests there that between them knew a lot of languages. The demons were interrogated in English, Latin, French, Lithuanian, and German, and knew all the languages. Okay, there's no way to account for that. Third sign, knowledge of hidden things, knowledge of secrets. In the movies, this is always your sins. That happens sometimes, but not very often. Usually they'll tell you about something that happened elsewhere or to the priest or on the way to the case when the person was miles away and had no way of knowing. They'll reveal some hidden knowledge. Detecting the holy is the 4th. I have a relic in my pocket, nobody knows about it. You walk in the room, almost invariably, the demon will say, oh, so-and-so's here. Just as a side note, they'll never use the proper name of the saint, or at least I've never seen it. They'll always use a nickname that the saint had within their religious order. So we had a relic of Mother Teresa at one case, and they said, oh, the little one's here, which is what they used to call her within her order. The little flower will be referenced as the little flower, not Therese of Lisieux, etc., etc. So detecting the holy. Now, you don't want to hold a crucifix up and then they cringe, because that's obviously a holy thing. You have to be a little bit smart because you're trying to document these things for the bishop. Okay. How do we get out of these situations? We mentioned renunciation, removing the legal rights, is critical. That involves getting educated. You have to know what's going on, understand the rules, understand what rules have been broken. Sometimes the rules were broken by an ancestor. You didn't do anything yourself, but a parent may have done it. And you might say, oh, that seems unfair. But does God honor the baptism of your baby? Yes. The parents have spiritual authority over their children and can speak for the baby and have the baby baptized. Likewise, parents can do the opposite, and they're allowed to exercise their free will. So we do sometimes see situations where the person didn't do anything themselves. So renouncing things, breaking the rights, and then the sacramental life is the next thing that I see is the most important. And people say, no, I want something dramatic. I want the big exorcism and the holy water flying and we need the big sledgehammer. You must bring and do the special thing or I won't be freed. And unless they lay the foundation of changing their life and changing themselves and engaging in the sacramental life, you can come in with the big sledgehammer, the spiritual sledgehammer, and maybe it'll stop for a couple days, it probably won't, and it'll be right back. There's no point going through an exorcism until the person's ready to be converted closer to God. And the sacramental life for Catholics is unbelievably beneficial. You have access to tremendous graces and power from God through the sacraments. You must use them. When it comes to demons, in particular, confession and Mass, you must take advantage of confession. The devil, by the way, in the exorcisms, when we deal with him in person, when he's in a body and talking and being lawyerly outside of the parlor tricks to scare us, we know and we've seen he's not allowed to bring up and usually can't even remember a sin that's confessed. God wipes it from his mind. In the rare cases he might seem to be referencing it, the one time I've ever seen him bring up a sin that was confessed, it was confessed 10 minutes before the exorcism, The priest said, that's been confessed, it's off the table. He shut up instantly and never brought it up again. You need to take advantage of confession. If you're living in a state of spiritual death, which is what mortal sin is, you're cut off from God. You can pray to God for the grace to help you get out of mortal sin, but you can't basically expect God, I'll say a prayer for somebody and God, you're going to respond and do that. You've cut yourself off, you're in a state of spiritual death if you have mortal sin on you. You've separated yourself from God. Get back in that proper state so that you can pray and grace moves. We see that even more dramatically in the work that we do because we have a litmus test of a demon actually in the room. So we can see that response. It's a little different for the exorcist priests, by the way. They have apostolic authority lent to them. Of course they've gone to confession. Those of us in this work, you would never go into the room with mortal sin on yourself. I'm aware of one case where somebody had a very bad experience because they did that. Prayers and blessings have to be part of your life as you're coming out of this. Conversion, sacraments, prayers and blessings. The whole question of deliverance prayer is a complicated one we don't have time for. I work in the area of exorcism. Exorcism is qualitatively different than deliverance. Why? Deliverance is what? Oh God, please help this person. That's really what deliverance means. It's deprecatory prayer, which means a request, coming back to submission to God. God, please help this person. I wait and see if God responds. Exorcism is, in the name of Jesus, get out. Direct confrontation. Very different. And if you're going to command a demon, you have consented to a struggle with that demon because you have challenged it. This is why you need the apostolic authority behind you backing up your command, because when a bishop tells you to do something, it's not just you saying it. The entire weight of the church is saying it because the apostolic authority is there. So deliverance is there. It's an important part of things. But in the work that we do, we're more at that qualitatively different stage. I will say, be careful with deliverance prayer when there's sessions that are not moderated by a priest. And you can go read the letter on EWTN's website that then Cardinal Ratzinger wrote about this to correct this around the world. That there was deliverance teams working without any priestly oversight or supervision. And be very careful if people are laying hands on you that you don't know who they are and they're praying. Because when you let somebody touch you and pray, particularly if they're saying commands, you have consented to share in whatever their spiritual baggage is. And I can tell you, because I've worked with many possessed people, some of which are coming out of Satanism and witchcraft, there are people that go to these open prayer sessions just to try to spiritually infect other people because they're trying to do as much harm as possible. So just be very careful. I would say it's best to have a priest. If somebody's going to touch you and pray, let it be a priest with consecrated hands. If you're going to let other people touch you and pray, at least know very well that they're in a right relationship with God before you do that. I have seen real cases come out of people letting other people lay hands on them and pray, and them getting a problem from that. Okay, so just be cautious. I'm not saying it's all bad, but you need to be wise about that. So how can we stay safe in this culture? Again, as Catholics, we have access to the sacraments. That's the foundation. Confession followed by Mass removes relationships with sin and gives us strength. That needs to be the core of your life, that and prayer. Understand, reflect on, and try to live by the 10 Commandments at a bare minimum. The 10 Commandments are concrete things that God says, hey, this is a real problem. I really don't want you to do these things. You're going to be in a state of spiritual death if you do them. And then Jesus took it a little further and said, I want you to deepen that commitment even more, that if you even entertain and continue to think about that sin, you look in lust, you might as well have done it. That idea. The conversion in the spiritual life starts with the basics of, okay, I'm just going to control myself and not eat the ice cream. But the journey in the spiritual life, particularly out of the Carmelite orders, is what? To get to the point where I understand where the urge for the ice cream comes from. And I try to change myself and conform so I get to the point where there's no more urge for the ice cream. So it's not this gritting your teeth and fighting through it and not doing these things, but it's getting to the root of it. That's more the deeper spiritual journey that I think Jesus echoed in saying, it's also what's going on in here. It's not just what you do. That you need to go further. Pray for the grace to be closer to God. And I don't mean that in kind of a simplistic way. It's not like a dismissive, feel-good statement. I know for myself at least, when I've been struggling in life, and struggling and thinking I'm not doing enough, I'm not praying enough, I keep falling to these sins, at least pray for the grace to pray. I know that sounds silly, but start there if you're having trouble. Get in the spiritual life going. I have found incredible results to say, Lord, I'm struggling. I'm not really engaging in this. I'm not really engaging in Mass today or recently. I feel like I'm drifting. Please give me the grace to pray more. And I think he really likes that request because you're acknowledging that you're helpless without him, and you're asking for the grace to cooperate more with him and come closer to him.